This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, hello everybody, welcome. This is the Easthampton City Council Public Safety Meeting at 6 p.m. On the 14th of January 2025. We are here physically, myself and my other committee member, Councilor Derby. Councilor Riley can't be here today. We're at 50 Pace in room 1, and welcome everyone remotely. Just to mute your microphones if you're not speaking, and use the raise hand feature when there's opportunities for the public to speak. So this meeting is called to order. We have some old minutes and I think there's one more set that I was going to catch up on, but Councilor, you have a chance to look at those. I think 1210 and 312.
1210 and 312. That's fine.
Okay.
I've moved to approve those minutes.
All right. Second. So we have a motion and a second to approve the old minutes from December 10th, 2024 and March 12th, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved 2-0. Moving on. We have a couple items on the agenda that we have some potential municipal stakeholders here to talk about, members of the departments. And so I might do some shuffling around in terms of the order of things that you see here. I know that we're waiting for Director Nettleman from the DPW. There's on our roadway infrastructure and pedestrian safety items, I know that there are people here at the meeting to discuss the Loudville West Street intersection. So I would encourage you to wait until that time. I will open up a specific public speak time for that. But I know we do have a member of the public here who wanted to just speak in general about some concerns. So if you're interested in speaking right now,
Okay.
About the things we discussed previously, go ahead. I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay.
And we can definitely address this later, just in terms of some thoughts back and forth.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Thomas Trout, 8 Getty Street, Easthampton, newly arrived here in Easthampton from Northampton. Being right underneath the mountain there and having the 2 main roads where I live, being Route 141 Holyoke Street and East Street, as a cyclist and a pedestrian, it's called my attention, and I was aware of this earlier because I've been riding East Street for many years anyways, that like what has been done with Holyoke Street with a 10-foot lane and traffic calming there and bike lanes, really huge improvement on that road. We need to apply that to East Street. I think it's a fairly easy fix. East Street is a 3-mile uninterrupted free-for-all. It's posted 35, and you know, I've been listening in on the West Street story, and I understand the whole speeding and rate, stuff going on in this town and everywhere really, and we have to design in traffic calming and the Complete Streets initiative, which has been started here on Union Street. It's going to resume with the upcoming redesign for Main Street. That's all part of this idea of what has to apply to East Street now as well. And my thoughts are that a very simple fix, very similar to what you did with Holyoke Street, 10-foot lane, not 11, not 12, but 10, keeps the cars at 30, 35, roughly. That's going to do the job of, posting signs and putting police on the road isn't working. We all know that, but that will really help that. That then gives you whatever's left over. We'll call it a bike lane or a pedestrian lane. There's a CSA that I go to there. It's the Mountain View CSA, very popular. they've been living on that street, and they would like to have bicycles come to get their vegetables on bicycles there, but nobody does it. I've spoken to them several times about this, and I'm one of them that wanted to go on my bike, but I never did it because it's just too scary. That road could be calmed down, and we can add pedestrians and cyclists to the right now 100% motor vehicles only. And I think that would be a huge upgrade for this city. Am I out of time?
You have 20 seconds.
So that street is a beautiful street. It's one of the most prized scenic views of this entire area, not just Easthampton. And it's been relegated to fast moving cars only. I think what we should do is get those lines painted, the fog lines painted. We'll call that a bike lane. And then if pedestrians can start to walk on there, that's great. Later, I think adding a stop sign at
Just finish up your thought.
adding a stop sign at Parsons and adding a stop sign at Ferry would break that 3-mile uninterrupted thing happening, because people are going to be speeding to get their Dunkin' Donuts as soon as that thing's open. And we need to take control of that street. I would love to see it. And I hope that maybe I can help. I'll do anything possible to help with future, visual aids and things like that to talk about this more.
Okay, thank you. And so we can't respond directly. I will say we do have this open item, roadway infrastructure, pedestrian safety items. I know there's a bunch of people on the call today who want to talk about a specific intersection. So I'll probably open it up to that first, but then I'll discuss, Councilor Derby and I will kind of brainstorm here just in terms of that item. I think this is really housekeeping, but we have the new business removal of Brewster Avenue, and that was basically just an oversight because we gave it. So unless there's a concern, I would just
move it.
remove that.
Yeah.
If you have any concern. Okay, so I'll just take a motion to remove Brewster Avenue as a one-way street. Second, so we motion a second. All in favor? I will make a recommendation to the council that we voted 2-0 to remove Brewster Avenue. Just for the public to know, Brewster Avenue was was let go of by the city as a public way a few years back in a exchange between the city and Williston Northampton School to make room for the Rotary by Mountain View School. So we just still have that on the books, and we're just getting rid of that. Not much to discuss there. So continuing business, roadway infrastructure and pedestrian safety items. Again, I know that there's a number of residents here. Just for transparency's sake, I did hold a constituent meeting a few weeks back, met with a number of residents from the Loudville, West Street, Glendale area with concerns about that 4-way intersection. I asked a representative of the police department to be here, and I saw that Eric Alexander is here, and I think Director Nullman will be joining us in approximately 7 minutes, but that probably gives us enough time now to open it up to any public comments about that intersection. If people want to just on the public record make any statements about that intersection by a show of your virtual hand. Mary, I see you're physically raising your hand, and I will recognize you. And so why don't we have you speak first? So you have 3 minutes if you want to unmute yourself. And go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Mary Brown, and I live at 9 Loudville Road. I've been here since 2020, but my son lives next door, so I'm quite familiar with the area and the intersection. A number of years ago, I witnessed a man coming down Loudville on a bicycle, and he ended up going into a car. And ever since then, I've just been, just really freaked out about that intersection. It was a horrible, horrible sound and just really heartbreaking. So I like the idea of the complete streets, and I like the idea of having a speed limit, possibly 30 citywide, but we really need to slow down the traffic here on this road. When they redid the intersection, they took out the blinking yellow light, yellow and red, yellow for Loudville to Glendale Street. And since then, the people that are coming down from Loudville are just, flying down through that intersection. And there's quite a number of accidents, and they occur quite regularly here. I'm retired, so I'm home, and I see a lot. Let's see. We talked about the bridge repair, because we know that the bridge on Glendale Street is going to be repaired at some time in the future, and we were hoping that there could be some consideration made for a walkway or bikeway there, thinking in terms of having people from this area and West Street area be able to access downtown. Because right now, if you try to walk, you're taking your life into your hands. Same thing with a bicycle. There are no sidewalks, in case anybody doesn't know that. We were hoping to get some accident reports, and let's see. What did I forget? Julia. Let's see. Oh, I talked about there's a lot of truck traffic here, and we have dump trucks, we have all kinds of trucks coming down through, all kinds of, and they're exceeding the speed limit, not all the time, but a lot. And so it's 30 miles per hour in front of my house, and it's pretty rare that anybody's going that slow.
So Mary, if you want to just wrap up, that was 3 minutes. If you have any.
I think I am wrapped up.
Thank you. Anyone else on that topic? Just to show, I can't necessarily see everyone's screen, so if you can use the virtual raise hand feature, that's the little hand at the bottom of the screen. If anyone else wants to comment on this specifically. I don't see any. Okay. So just to summarize, and I actually think Mary did a good job. Oh, wait, was that somebody on the, okay. Julia, just under the wire, we'll give you 3 minutes to speak. If you want to unmute yourself. I get Julia. So just by either, if you want to speak, can you use the raise hand again, just to make sure I understood that correctly? Okay, I'm not seeing that. I don't know if there's. So just to summarize that conversation, I think there was about eight to 10 residents from the area. The resident who just spoke, I think, summarized a lot of the concerns. Obviously, speed. There have been I see that Julia just rejoined. Before I get into that, Julia, did you want to? Are you there? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can. Let's get.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. You got 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think Mary covered most of the items. The only thing I was going to add was when we talked at our meeting that Owen mentioned, we kind of thought as a good first step was kind of tackling like the low-hanging fruit, like the cheaper things that could possibly be done to help improve the safety, including potentially converting it to a four-way stop sign, looking at narrowing the lane, possibly, if that's possible, maybe adding the bike symbol in the shoulder. I think anything that can be done to slow the traffic coming down Loudville would be ideal, because basically when you're coming down right now, you almost need to stop in order to see who's coming down Pomeroy Meadow, and all it takes is for someone to blow the stop sign there and hit you if you're not. Yeah, and then I think everything else Mary covered. But yeah, kind of thinking that first phase would be more of those easier items, and then also thinking about long-term what could be done. And I think Mary mentioned we were talking about maybe that project on Glendale for the bridge, if we could incorporate something larger like putting in sidewalks in the long term. I think that would be smart, just to be in on the design phase of whatever is happening down there. I think that's it for me.
Okay. Mary, I'm gonna, since you already spoke, I'm just gonna limit it to one per person. So you can always, if you have follow-up concerns or questions, you can always either email me or Counselor Derby. Our emails are on the website. Yeah, I think the residents summarized it well. There's concerns about accidents there. Have reached out. The police are working on accident report going back 10 years. I think they're still compiling the data. I know we do have a representative from the police department on the call. I'll turn it over to them shortly, and I see Director Nettleman from the DPW is also here. I know it's a difficult intersection. I think residents understand with things like this that we're sometimes limited, by what we're able to do, B, by the money needed to do it. There's lots of things we talk about in terms of traffic mitigation, and ultimately we might not be able to do them at all. And obviously the DPW director will comment more on that. Things we talked about that might be realistic, and obviously those who are more in the know will be able to comment. Obviously speed enforcement. We talked about looking into some form of permanent speed feedback signs in the area, flashing slow signs. I think someone had mentioned narrowing the lanes with fog lines, which seems to have been effective, and we just did that on West Street. And there were some questions about the bridge too, farther down, just as a further connector to those roadways. That's a general summary. I don't know if you have any preliminary. Okay. So we have Eric Alexander, and forgive me, I always forget, is it Sergeant Detective? What's the appropriate, I want to address you appropriately.
Good evening. You can call me whatever you want. Detective Lieutenant is my official title, but
Okay.
I'm not going to be offended.
We have Detective Lieutenant Alexander on the call, so I'll turn it over to you first, just for your thoughts about what the police think about that. I know that there's lots of roads in Easthampton, speeding is constantly a problem, and then obviously get some comments from Director Nettleman as well. So take it away, Detective Lieutenant.
Sure. Thank you, Counselor Zarek, Counselor Derby. Good evening, everybody else. So we did the data for the past 10 years. We use LexisNexis for all of our crash reports that get uploaded to their database online. And there were 35 crashes from 2015 to present. I know that gives an average of 3.5, 3.5 a year, but it's sporadic. And now those are crashes that are deemed to be over $1,000 in damage. It's an estimate. I'm not an insurance adjuster, and nowadays it doesn't take much to have $1,000 in damage to your vehicle. So any other minor crashes, those may not be mandatory to be state reported. So 35 crashes, like I said. So Counselor Zarek, I know you were talking about the permanent flashing speed signs, and every year we apply for a grant. It's a Massachusetts Road Safety grant that's funded through NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and that's done in the summer months. It's not out of the realm of possibility. We apply, and typically we've been fortunate. We've been approved every year for funding to purchase some of those permanent flashing speed signs. Now, there are significant costs, but I think this, in my opinion, I would say the opinion of the police department is that this location would qualify as a pretty good spot for those flashing signs. So my brother, who's a lieutenant also for the community services lieutenant and operations, he does the grant writing for that specifically. And so I think that'll be the goal for this summer when the grant opportunity opens up to apply.
Great. And Detective Lieutenant, one of the things that I told the residents, I tell all residents about speeding is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that is it best for the police department to report patterns? In other words, if you know that they're speeding on Tuesday afternoons from 4 to 6, does that help the department be able to assign details?
Absolutely. You can contact the department, I know, online and report or request radar if you think that you're recognizing a pattern of a specific time. And piggybacking again and talking about those speed signs, they collect data that's very specific. So it'll give you all of the speeds that are captured, but obviously it compiles it into time of day, the day of the week. And so it gives us a better understanding too when we need to target that area more frequently.
Great. Do you have any questions? No. I guess the only other question regarding the grant, and so again, this would be a permanent sign for that location?
That was the thought. We have I know we just got a few more, don't mark my words, either 3 or 4 temporary where you see them kind of moving around the community every couple of weeks. Depends on the battery life, obviously, and with the cold weather, they don't last as long. So you may see them out there where they're not functioning, but we have an officer dedicated to changing those out and moving them in the requested areas. But I don't know if you saw, I believe Greg can speak to this, but the permanent sign that was placed outside 47 Cottage Street, right near the crosswalk heading towards downtown at Cottage and Union, and that would be pretty much what the sign would look like. You just have a solar battery attached to it, and it would remain there indefinitely.
No, that's great. And this committee previously has agreed that that's probably in the city's best interest to, in strategic locations, get permanent signs, obviously with feedback from DPW and police where those should go. Certainly if you need us to offer any sort of letter of support when it's time to apply for the grant, certainly feel free to reach out.
Appreciate that.
Great. And any other thoughts from the police side before I turn it over to Director Nuttleman?
I think that's it on our end for now.
Okay. All right. And we have Director, thank you. We have Director Nuttleman on the call. I know that the nuts and bolts and talking about the infrastructure and things like traffic lights and stop signs and speed bumps and all of that is really in the purview of your department, both in terms of making the requests, but also the knowledge to know what's appropriate where, and also the prior requests and needs already in place. So we talked a little bit on background about this, but I'm interested in your thoughts about this intersection in general and what possibly could be done and sort of take it away.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Greg Nuttleman, the Director of Public Works for the city. We're kind of already doing what we can with that intersection. Mass DOT announced a materials procurement program that will fund the engineering and signage, traffic markings necessary to convert that to a 4-way stop. Doing much more than that is very challenging because it's only, the intersection currently is only about 10 years old. It was a TIP project, transportation improvement program, the same funding mechanism that just did Union Street and that we're working a project through for Main Street. That project actually started in design back in 2006 and came to fruition in 2014-15 for construction. And what that did was lowered the crest there at Loudville Road by about 2.5 feet, required redoing the water main to get it deeper, filled in the sag curves that were there on Glendale and Pomeroy Meadow, included taking down and demolishing a house to fix the sight lines to make that so that they're compliant with the speed limit in that area. So, like that being said, we finding, a large amount of funding to do something more significant there is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's close to impossible. There's some significant challenges with realigning things as it's floodplain there in the fields and active agricultural properties. So, but I think going to the 4-way stop is feasible, and we may be able to get Mass DOT to foot the bill for it. So we are looking into that. They didn't make it a 4-way stop back then because it didn't meet the Mass DOT's requirements at that time for a 4-way stop. So they've made some changes to their criteria, and it very well may now meet the warrants to be a 4-way stop. So we will, I have a webinar on Thursday I need to be at to get some more details from MassDOT on that materials procurement program that they've put out for us. So I do think that will make it significantly better.
Any questions?
Nope.
And so what's typically, because governments move slow. So if that was something we could both investigate and look at, and I know things cost money and we have a number of priorities throughout the city, like what's the timeline on something like that in terms of, or is it hard to say?
Well, it's hard to say now. I'll know more on Thursday.
Okay, all right, I'll connect with you then.
Yeah.
And then in terms of things like looking at lanes and narrowing lanes and repainting fog lines as options for speed mitigation, is that something that's possible on the street? I know it's kind of, again, there's drop-offs on both sides. It's really complicated with those shoulders, but is there any room there at all for anything like that?
Well, I'd have to look exactly what the lane width is. I know Loudville Road going out of town from the intersection, heading towards Torrey, Westhampton. I don't think there's fog lines on the road there, but the lanes aren't terribly wide through that section of road. Anyway, they're definitely wider heading towards the bridge. I'd have to get the measurements of the lane widths that are there, but all that work was it's really not. It was designed. It's not an older section where it's designed, pretty close to the best way it can be to today's standards.
Okay. And then lastly, just any updates on the bridge on Glendale? I know we had talked about that.
Yeah, we're just trying to find money. The mayor was able to fund a design through 25% to try to have a shovel-ready project there, so that we could, chase the next funding mechanism that became available. We did just complete an application to Pioneer Valley Planning Commission for a new pot of federal money that's coming out. We had to have that in by, I think it was January 3rd. They wanted that, so we got that into them with all the information from the design that we have moving forward. But we're looking at a probable construction cost in the area of $9 million to replace that bridge. So it's challenging.
Okay, great.
Just have one.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Hey, Greg, Salem. How's it going? Just a quick question. I noticed that some other stop signs in town with the flashing red lights have gone up.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe this intersection would qualify in the meantime until we're able to figure out what a 4-way stop would look like and get that mechanism figured out.
It has them. They're LED flashing stop signs at West and Pomeroy Meadow.
Perfect.
There's no stop on the Loudville approach, so.
Right. So the ultimate goal would be to get some there too.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that will work. I mean, that will make it a lot safer. I mean, there's no amount of engineering control that we can build in to overcome human behavior, right? Like, we do the best we can everywhere we can. I can tell you, we just got a grant, just under 180,000 to do an RFB on Glendale at Knight Avenue, that crossing there, and extend the sidewalk down Knight Avenue to where, because it comes down Knight about halfway and it stops. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna try to see if we can get a hold of some other funding to replace the sidewalk all the way down Glendale and leave a good spot to come to on Glendale when we get the bridge in. Another thing we're going to look at in that project is raising that crosswalk at Glendale and Knight. I've got an email from VHB, our traffic consultant, that they refer to Glendale and Loudville as arterial roadways, which aren't really the best to put in a raised crosswalk or speed table on. But I think I'm going to ask them to take a harder look at that section of Glendale from south to Maine, because that's really becomes more of a residential area than it is arterial roadway at that point. So, that could be a positive, have a positive impact on speeding, at least through that section. If we could get if we're going to do that crosswalk anyway, maybe we can raise it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be like day and night.
Yeah.
But we need to take I can't guarantee that, but we're going to look at it. But we will get the RFB and some new sidewalk in there. And I'm looking forward to that project. I was really happy to learn that we got that grant awarded.
Great.
Anything else? Director Nuttleman, and I guess to Detective Lieutenant Alexander too. First of all, thank you for being here. Just for the public to know, these are city employees who work tirelessly during the day and are wonderful enough to come and lend their input, afterwards, meetings like this too, and we're really appreciative. There's a few other, I don't know if the other significant items that we have on the agenda are just a discussion about Dalyfield Road. That's really it. I don't know if either of you feel like you have to be here for that. I already got feedback from the police chief, the acting chief, about the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit proposal. Do either of you want to hang around for anything else, or?
I can, if anyone has any more questions, or any of the residents on the call, if you feel free to email DPW or email me directly, and I can answer any questions you have. So.
And
sorry.
I was just gonna say, what's the address?
The easiest one's going to be dpw@easthamptonma.gov.
Okay. And Detective Alexander, go ahead.
The same goes for us with the police department. If there's a problem, you can log onto the website, and there's a spot to to get in touch with us to report a traffic issue, and we will look into it ASAP.
Okay, great. Thank you both for being here, and
Appreciate it.
We'll reach out between meetings just to coordinate. Director Nuttleman, I'll touch base with you. Just curious about how that meeting goes and if there's any more information.
Yeah, we'll find out Thursday.
Okay, thanks. Thank you both.
All right, thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Just in the interest of fairness, we did just have another member of the public come in who I know is interested in this topic. So if you want to speak on the public record at all about the Loudville intersection, if you want your time, just like everyone else was available to anyone else, you're certainly welcome to it.
Sure. I think I just want to state that,
I just name and address.
Nicole Morrison, 239 Loudville.
Great.
And I think I just want to state that we're really concerned about that intersection and the safety at that intersection, as well as pedestrian safety at that intersection. And what brought me here was that my daughter's bus was hit at that intersection. So that kind of started the concern, right? And just trying to advocate for it to be a safe intersection that we drive through every single day when we come to the town, when we come to sporting events, when we go to the school, and be able to also, it's not going to be perfect, but it's a busy road, but if we could make it as safe as possible, that would be really beneficial for us.
Thank you. Any follow-up thoughts about that conversation at all?
I mean, it seems like there's not a ton that we can do yet, but
Right.
Keep it on the radar.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some, hopefully the police keep it on the radar and stop the speeding. But it sounds like there's some good potential things on the horizon. I think it's promising that a four-way stop could be put in. I'm really glad to hear about the possibility for a grant for a permanent speed sign there. That kind of checks off one of the things we talked about. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll update the public as needed, and certainly the public can reach out to us with concerns. So just quickly too about the bike lanes. I met with the new planner just to relay the thoughts about the resident, particularly on East Street, and he had also mentioned Hendricks. She had mentioned complete streets and how kind of outlines a strategy in terms of how do we take kind of a set of rules and apply them to any given street in terms of fitting in bike lanes, because some are too narrow, or some are more accommodating. But you know, obviously, you sat on the council a long time, you sat on this committee a long time, and you're a cyclist. So I'm just interested if you have any input or thoughts about, you know, tackling this as we try to become more bike friendly and adapt our infrastructure for bicycles.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Greg is going to be the most important connection here, because as they figure out what streets are next on the list, that's really the time when you are going to be able to tackle some of these things. And I know we've talked, you know, back when Stuart Beckley was the planner, one of the things we talked about was creating an ordinance that required bike lanes be put in if anytime a street was paved, or a sidewalk if it was feasible.
Mhm.
We got shot down because that hamstrings a lot.
Mhm.
You know, so I think it's really the most important thing is to have Greg on board and to have a plan that kind of, you know, sets the trajectory for making sure that when we can apply for state grants, because I mean, it's going to be really difficult for us to, you know, I mean, East Street, I think fog lines and potentially looking at narrowing the road, I think that's going to be a quick solution. But if you're looking at really making it a standardized, you know, the proper width with proper sidewalks, which is a separated, you know, multi-use sidewalk, so it bikes and whatever, that's a lot. That's taking property. That's a lot. That's huge.
Yep.
So, you know, I think those types of projects are going to have to, you know, go through the DPW, through federal and state grants that are bigger than us.
Yeah, no, I agree. That makes sense.
I think we set the trajectory. Do we want this? Yes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
do we want to make sure that we create arteries to the bike path and to downtown, to shopping, that are pedestrian and bike friendly? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's where the power we have right now.
Mhm. Yeah, and I could reach out to Greg. I don't know if he was on the call when the president spoke during public speak, but I guess the question kind of is, what's the timeline for East Street in terms of paving? And then if there's any short-term options in terms of repainting?
I think the short-term option is looking at the painting.
Yeah.
Because that's the cheapest,
Mhm.
that's the easiest. And, you know, getting narrower lanes with fog lines will give you at least some shoulder.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's incremental.
Yeah.
And I think it's anything we can get right away is great. And then we can work about the bigger thing
the bigger
later.
things, right? Yeah.
You know, can I just comment about West Street real quick? No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I would love for you.
I know, that's okay.
We'll
No, I know.
reserve for afterwards.
It's my first meeting. So
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk afterwards.
yeah, no problem.
I'm just typing your thoughts here.
But again, I think that that's something that we want to put on Greg's radar.
Mhm.
You know, obviously he has a lot to manage
Right.
as it relates to traffic safety in the city.
Mhm.
There's a lot of spots. And I think his comment is a sage comment that there's no amount of engineering that we can do to, you know, account for human behavior.
Mhm.
And that's an unfortunate piece. You know, I know a lot of the accidents that happened are people not following traffic rules,
Mhm.
you know, not running stop signs and
Yep.
speeding, whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, something I'd be very interested in is almost like a public information campaign on the part of the city, to, you know, basically try to educate people more about what are some of our hot spots, like slow down, you know. The resident here and I talked about, we have those new bike lanes right out there that no one necessarily knows what they even mean. And I think that I don't even know who to talk to about that, because we don't have like a comms director for the city, but it would be an interesting thing to brainstorm about, you know, how we could do that. Maybe work with Easthampton Media or something like that. So
I think that's good.
so moving on, we have the review of the traffic rules in order, but we're holding on that. That's more of a side project. There's the request to consider a citywide speed limit. We've talked about this a few times. Basically, what this would do is where we would currently cities have a 30-mile-per-hour citywide speed limit. You can adopt or opt into state law that allows you to reduce it's the citywide speed limit of 25 miles per hour. And that applies to business districts in thickly settled areas. And so I think this committee as a whole embraces the idea. And I think it's a good practice. It's setting a message in terms of our values and what we stand for. And also, I think addresses some conversations we've been having where people want their streets reduced to 25 anyways. I wrote we'd have to basically, and I can bring this to the next meeting, we basically would have to go into the traffic rules in order and define what our business district is, which I don't think would be very difficult. I think it would be based just on like industrial and commercial zoning.
Yeah, zoning.
And then thickly settled areas would have to have a definition. We'd use a state definition. And basically what that means is it just has to do with proximity of houses to each other, residential areas, which I think for the most part, most neighborhoods in the city are.
Yeah.
And so
I think that, you know, if we do decide, just connecting these two pieces that we have on the table here, you know, if we do decide to move forward with this, which I don't see why we wouldn't, the implementation of this could kind of dovetail with the idea of kind of getting information out to people about what you were talking about before. You know, I see those two things as like a convergence where we could use an introduction of a citywide speed limit to raise everybody's awareness about people speeding and following traffic rules. So I think maybe as we move forward, that's something that we can kind of connect.
yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. So the language right now, or the motion of ultimately, I think that we would vote on would basically just be to opt into MGL Chapter 90, Section 17C, to reduce the citywide speed limit to 25 miles per hour in business districts in thickly settled areas. I think that I just have to look back. I was looking through the traffic rules in order to figure out where to put in. I think I know where it would. I just want to kind of finalize that so I could propose it to you and the other committee member. And basically the language would just say, you know, per that, you know, to see what this, and then we'd probably list. So here's the interesting thing. So I reached out to DPW and I said, well, do you have a list of the speed limits in the city? They don't. So we have to figure that out. It would be otherwise posted, but I kind of wish there was a master list. I'll have to connect with the police maybe. So that's kind of the only trick.
I mean, we also could just, I think that language that you just stated would be perfect. And like, I would have no problem moving that forward and then you just figuring it out where you want it to go later. Like that can be a secondary.
You mean
as far as where it fits.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that the idea of having if they don't have a master list, the idea of us creating a master list, that sounds like a big project. It's almost like a GIS project that the planning department would do. You know, when they have like a researcher assistant come in, or you know, from college.
I mean, I guess what we'd have to do is almost kind of create like a mandate if we do this. Someone would have to drive the city and say, what about this street? What about that street? You know?
I mean, I think the way that it would be enforced before all that happened would just be police know certain stretches where they do radar enforcement. They know what the speed limit is posted. And so, you know, they are probably not doing it in places. And if it's not posted, it's 25, you know, so,
right.
So
I think
those signs are still being enforced. And so I guess, you know, like it doesn't necessarily have to be written down before we move forward. But that is a good idea to try to have those things in writing somewhere.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with that, I mean, I'm happy to move this with the understanding that I'll have to finish up the language and figure out exactly the article and section.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's just the article and section, then we're good. I mean, language sounded good to me.
Okay.
I think the only piece of that language that you would want, you would just have to make those two definitions, or maybe 2 or 3 definitions.
Okay.
But those are basic.
So if you're okay with moving that to the full council to set a public hearing, maybe we could do that with enough time where I could actually bring forward exactly what we're going to say.
Perfect. Let's go for like not the next one, but the next one.
Correct. Yeah, the second meeting in February.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to move this to the full council.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That passes 2-0. So, great. And We're just cruising within the speed limit. Okay, so that brings us to the proposal. Actually, I just want to make sure, I apologize. Is there anyone from the public who wants to address the request to consider a citywide speed limit? Oh, and yes, okay, we have a couple people. So Sean raised his hand first. So Sean, I'll give you, one second, let me get back to my timer. Hold on. Okay, Sean, if you want to speak first, and go.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I mean, you guys are already on the same page as I am, but I thought it would be good, and I'll probably come back to the city council meeting as well for this to provide a little bit of like color and background as to why 25 months.
Sean, just name and address really quickly. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sean Abbott, 21 Summer Street.
Thank you.
To provide a little bit of color and background as to why a 25-mile-hour speed limit is so desirable, and also address a few of the comments that have been floating around with a few of these things, just in general. First of all, 25-mile-an-hour speed limits are significantly safer, especially for vulnerable road users, than anything faster. There is a massive, I think most folks remember sort of the equation for force, which is mass times energy squared. So more speed, sort of translates into more damage to human bodies very rapidly. So a little bit of context about that. The National Association of City Transportation Officials did sort of a meta study not too long ago. Unfortunately, it was they took studies out of England, but just to give you a little bit of idea about how big a difference speed makes in terms of like killing people. The risk of pedestrian fatality at impact speeds is for 30 miles per hour. You're seeing a 9 to 14% chance of pedestrian fatality if they get hit by the front of a car. But at 40 miles per hour, a mere 10 miles per hour more, you're looking at something between 31 and 60% chance of human fatality. So it's a big difference when we slow people down. Those studies were also conducted a long time ago in England, where they drive European-sized cars. Now, what we found, the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety has noted that the American cars have increased in height, size, and weight by a significant portion since those studies were done. And those increases massively increase the amount of damage that vehicles do to human bodies. So American cars, like the Ford F-150s and the other large trucks that everybody loves, are more likely to knock a pedestrian down and drag them under the wheels and do significant bodily harm. All of these studies only look at human fatality. They don't look at disability adjusted life years, which is, I think, a much more significant measure for what it means to live a happy and productive life, because we find you find that like just counting fatalities doesn't count the number of people who are made paraplegic or the number of people who lose a limb. Or the number
just wrap up your thoughts, Sean.
Yep. All right. So anyway, 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is great. I would also argue that if we do impose a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, we should also do the communications things that you folks have been talking about, because it's important that people know that it's not about getting traffic tickets. And then when we start with a 25-mile-an-hour street speed limit, we can work towards getting street design that slows people down. I categorically disagree with the idea that no amount of engineering can overcome human behavior. People slow down when the street wants them to slow down because it's narrower and it's more hazardous for them to drive. And they feel like it's more hazardous and their field of vision is narrowed. So thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I see Holden, is it Sparacino?
Hi, yes, Sparacino. Hi, Holden Sparacino, 12 Lord Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
I'll keep mine brief, but similar to Sean, I would support investigating a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in Easthampton. So I'm kind of in the South Street and Route 10 area, and both those streets, I'm not actually sure. I was panning around Google Maps trying to figure out what the posted speed limit of South Street is. I'm not sure, but you know, people kind of come down in that bike path area, and there's a lot of pedestrians, a lot of families, obviously using the bike path. And you know, I don't know, thinking about like a raised profile or something like that for that bike path intersection, as well as a posted lower speed limit, and then Route 10 as well, having a higher speed limit going, you know, into Big Y in that area. I also think, you know, you mentioned in the 25-mile-an-hour study, you would be looking at defining a commercial area or high density area. I would advocate for the inclusion of rental communities in that definition as well. Both Route 10 and South Street have really significant like apartment complexes on both of them. So just making sure that those populations are included when we're thinking about population density in our community.
Anything else? You have time.
No, I'll keep it short. Thank you. But yeah, interested to have that go forward, and hopefully that's you know, a successful investigation into lowering speed limits and lowering risk.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, just for the public too. So the regulations about adapting this section of Chapter 90 are set by the state, but I think that we certainly could easily play around with what we consider our local business districts, and I think thickly settled is pretty straightforward in terms of proximity of buildings to each other. So I think the concerns about specifically enumerated by the speaker, I think that would be covered. So I would be concerned. So so any, I guess, I know we moved.
We already moved it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the next thing is just to let everybody know that this is going to be moved to the full council, the second meeting in February.
Yeah.
There'll be a public hearing. And you can speak to it then as well.
Yeah, public hearings are fun. So all the participation here is great, but I consider it a warm up for the real performance, which is the public hearing where we actually get to potentially vote this into law for the city. So we'll be as good as possible. Trying to look to the paper, because that's where it actually ends up, but we try to be as good as possible about spreading the word about these hearings. So but the plan
It should be the second meeting in February.
yeah, so the second meeting in February at 6:15 in the chambers upstairs will be for that. So moving on, we have the proposal to reverse the traffic direction on Daly Field Road. Director Mason has been patiently waiting here. We've talked about this a few times, essentially for the public, as people know now, or maybe they don't. If you want to go to Nonotuck Park, you drive down Williston Avenue, take a right around to Lowndes, and then would take a left into the park to enter into Nonotuck Park. And then when leaving, you would take a left onto Daly Field Road and drive out through that road, kind of around the contour of the baseball field there, where it meets up with Hisgin Avenue. The Parks Commission and the Parks Director proposed reversing that direction because essentially that does a couple things. One is it reduces significant traffic congestion on Williston and Lowndes and allows a flow of traffic without any cross traffic turns. So you would come actually down Daly Field Road, take a right into the park, and then when leaving the park, you would take a right onto Lowndes and down Williston. We've talked about this a few times. It seems pretty straightforward. We've had testimony from commissioners as well as the Parks Director, and we've preliminarily approved it, but we wanted one more meeting to basically get committee level feedback, as well as there's some just minor developments in terms of how we will interact with the public on this to spread the word, and probably set a public hearing for that, assuming that we move it out of committee, and I can talk to you more about what we thought of for that. Well, I guess I could talk about that now. So, so the Parks Director sent us a list, which I relayed to the committee members, which basically is a number of abutting streets around the park, around Nonotuck, that would likely be affected by this change. And remember too, it's important to note that we're reversing the direction and for the benefits as noted above, but whether cars are coming in from Williston and leaving via Hisgen, or coming in from Hisgen and leaving Williston,
It's the same number
it's the
either
same number
way.
of cars, exactly. So it's just a little safer this way. But it is fair to notify all the abutters about that coming, and so we did provide a list. The plan would be to send postcards with the help of the planning department to those roads, and I'll have the park director come on a little bit and talk about that. We did talk about, just in terms of if this is moved out of committee, that we would probably want the meeting to be the first meeting in March, only because that allows enough time to get the postcards together. That's really all I have to say about that we haven't said already. Councilor Derby, anything else about that? So is there any public comment about this item before I turn over to Director Mason, who's been waiting patiently? By show of either physical or virtual hand. And, I'll give you 10 seconds or else I'm going to move on. Okay. So we have Director Mason here. We do also have, I see, one commissioner. So I'll turn it over to Director Mason to give input, thoughts, support, and then I'll just ask the commissioner of courtesy too if they are interested in any input. So Director John Mason, thank you for being here.
Councilor Zara, thank you. And I think you nailed all the key points of what we're trying to do. And the intent of notifying our abutters, we want to be, we're part of that neighborhood, Nonotuck Park is, and we want to be respectful of the neighbors around us. So, we really feel strongly that their input matters on this process. This has been one way this way we did some digging and research. It looks like 75 years of daily field going in this direction. So it's going to be a process, not only getting information out to leagues, but the thousands and thousands of visitors, dare I say 10,000s of visitors that come to the park during the year. So getting word out to our neighbors through the postcards, getting word out about potential public hearing, and getting feedback will go a long way for helping us on this project. As you stated, the safety and the congestion issues can help to be resolved. That doesn't mean that all issues will be resolved, because we will have a history of folks that have always used Williston Ave to Lowndes Ave to come into the park. So there will be some things to iron out and some education, but we will, if this moves forward, we would spend a lot of time trying to educate our visitors for the potential of this reversal. So thank you for this consideration, and thank you for summarizing the project.
And just for the public to know too, now that I'm to look at the map, so the streets currently in consideration for notification are in no specific order: Ward Avenue, Garfield Avenue, Hisgen, Bryan, Taft, Garrett Court, Williston Avenue, and Lowndes. The only question posed to me by the Parks Director, Councilor Derby, was, do we want to notify, do we have to notify the section of Park Street that's basically stretches from Ward to Taft?
I was looking, that was the one thing I was going to ask was, just because those, it might make sense just to, fill in the box. Just because those people will have people turning out of those streets, and that could be their front yard if they're on Park Street.
Yeah, we'll turning into.
Right. So
if you feel strongly,
honestly, I don't necessarily feel strongly. I feel like you could make the argument that they would be impacted by this.
Yeah,
change.
that was one of those gray areas, Salem, that we looked at, like in when I circle back with the planning department, because they're going to assist us with the getting this out. You know, if it's only a few dollars more to take care of adding Park, that section of Park Street, you know, maybe it's wise just to add it. But you know, that the neighborhood streets that we have identified are neighborhood streets where Park Street is used moreover by everybody to get to other parts of the city.
Right.
So it's more of an access road, that not just for that neighborhood, but for other parts of the city. So that's why it was kind of falling in that gray area. But yeah, we did look at that, and I'm open to whatever. I'll tell you.
I mean, I think I don't take me on this, but I think it's probably around 15 to 20 houses. I don't think it's a huge number. So, you know, I'll leave it to your judgment, but
I think in this capacity, I think more transparency and engagement is better. So
Yeah.
if you support it, I support it.
I think it would be probably, it would make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Director Mason, are you okay?
Yeah,
with that?
like I said, I have no problem with it. It was definitely one of those gray areas, and I was leaving up for a topic of discussion for you guys this evening. So adding that stretches is not a big deal at all.
And we talked earlier, and this kind of goes back to just to prep for the meeting. You know, this goes back to what we were talking about before, is that, you know, and it's not really in anything that we vote on per se, but, you know, there'll have to be a public campaign and signage. You'll be utilizing electric sign from DPW for, you know, people are going to come down Williston thinking they're entering a park. We'll need a detour sign. We'll probably need to designate which one of these streets, probably Taft, that people would enter through with a sign now that says Nonotuck Park, turn here, much like you have a sign for the high school or for the Williston athletic fields. I'll leave that up to obviously DPW and the parks, but you know, it's something that obviously us as municipal stakeholders and participants will need to have some participation in, just in terms of either spreading the word or giving thoughts when asked. So I did see that we had a parks commissioner on the call. If they're interested in speaking at all about this, just raise your virtual hand. But if I don't see any, I see there we go. The camera turned on, the hand went up. So Commissioner Henninger, you can correct me on the proper pronunciation, which I should know by now. I'm obviously interested in hearing your input.
Yep, Kira Henninger. I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission. I just came because it was posted in a community forum on social media, and there was a lot of chatter from residents with questions or feelings one way or the other. So I just wanted to be here to hear any additional thoughts that the community might have. And also just to reiterate what Director Mason said, is that, you know, we are partners with the neighbors, and we want to make sure that, you know, we want to hear your concerns and make sure that's considered in the planning for making this a successful change, and make sure we've thought about all the potential barriers and make sure that we can address those as best as possible. And so in also the thing that just came up about, should we include some of the Park Street residents? I definitely would be in favor of erring on the side of notifying too many people rather than potentially leaving residents out that might feel like they were going to be impacted and weren't considered. So I think it would be worth notifying them as well. Great.
And I talked to Director Mason about this before. We do have a commissioner here. I will. It'd be good to get any commissioners to show up to the public hearing, but also I'm going to email the chair of that commission just to ask for a letter of support, even though I think they voted on it, but just to make it clear that it was supported. So just thank you both for speaking. Actually, I do have something I wanted to read in the record, because I did get an email from a resident on Williston Avenue. I think it'd be important on this topic. So this is from Eileen Yeager. From 80 Wilson Avenue. As a 30+ year homeowner at 80 Wilson Avenue, I 100% wholeheartedly support reversing the flow of traffic so cars enter Daly Field Road from Taft Hiskin and exit the park on Lowndes to Williston. I've been told by some longtime residents that long ago that was the traffic pattern. It creates better flow, no cross traffic, and entering and exiting as it is now, which creates more safety for cars and pedestrians. It also alleviates the Saturday morning traffic backup, which can extend quite far down Williston. There are plenty of Saturday mornings when I can't back out my driveway and prefer to not be gardening to the smell of exhaust and music blaring. If there's going to be a backup, let it be on Daily Field. Related to this, but perhaps a separate conversation, the posted speed limit in Williston is 35 miles per hour, which means a lot of drivers going 40 to 50. There's a residential street with a cemetery and a school. I'd like to open the conversation on the speed limit reduced. One of the next steps to do this, I already told her that we're so. Yeah. So are you comfortable? So I think we're comfortable with this proposal. Okay.
Absolutely.
And does it make sense to you for a public hearing the first week of March, so we can have time to make sure that the public's notified?
Yep.
Great.
So I think we should bring this to the full council.
So the language I came up with, and also at the request of the city clerk, we would be the removal of that one-way street would coincide with this just for financial responsibility in the city to advertise. So the proposed language would be that I came up with, because it's a curved road. So it would be to add Daily Field Road under section 1-41 one-way streets, add Daily Field Road traffic to proceed in a southerly to easterly direction from Hiskin Avenue to Lowndes Avenue. Are you comfortable with that? I'll take a motion to, thank you. Second, all in favor? Aye. So that was approved 2-0. To recommend to the city council, we'll also recommend the public hearing at 6:15 on March, and yeah, I think so. We've covered all of our business for today. I don't think we have anything else.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thank you for addressing my long-windedness. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. I can't interrupt the motion. I will second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
coming.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.